Today's lesson is on solving inequalities that have the distributive property as well as like terms. As usual, we have a video guide to go along with the examples that we're going to do in today's lesson. If you haven't printed the video guide, go ahead and pause the video, print the video guide, and then come back and you can work the problems out with me. Now, we've done inequalities for the last few lessons. This is our last lesson on solving basic inequalities. So this one's obviously going to be the most difficult. All right, we're using the distributive property and like terms in all of our examples today. So to solve our first inequality, we have 2 parentheses b plus 10, and then plus 5b is less than 44 plus 4b. I always draw my line through that inequality sign so I can clearly see the two sides. Now remember, the first step is going to be the distributive property. We want to get rid of those parentheses. I don't want to have an equation or an inequality that has parentheses in it, so let's get rid of those first. So the parentheses with a number right outside, that means multiplication. There's no sign in between, so we're going to multiply that 2 to both terms inside the parentheses. So I'm going to take 2 times b, which this is like a 1b. They don't put the 1, but you can. So 2 times 1 is just 2b. And then you need to also multiply the 2 times the 10. So 2 times 10 gives me positive 20. And then the plus 5v will just come down. We do not multiply the 5v by 2 because it's outside of the parentheses. So the 5v just stays the same. Is less than. On the right-hand side, I don't have any parentheses there, so I'm just going to bring that down. 44 plus 4v. At this point, we've done the distributive property, now we need to do the like terms. If there's any like terms on the same side of the inequality, I need to get those together. So looking at the left-hand side, I notice I have a 2v and a 5v. The 20 does not go with those because it doesn't have a v, so that's going to stay the same. But my 2v and my plus 5v, I can put those together. So 2v plus 5v is 7v. And then my plus 20 stays the same. Is less than 44 plus 4v. These are not like terms, okay? 4v has the variable, 44 does not. So we'll just keep it the same, 44 plus 4v. Once we've done the distributive property and we've combined like terms, then it's just basic solving. So we need to get our variables on the left-hand side, which means this 4v needs to cancel. So to cancel out a plus 4v, we just do the opposite. Subtract 4v on both sides. So 7v minus 4v is 3v plus 20 is less than 44. So all of my variables are on the left. I want only numbers on the right. So that means my 20 needs to cancel. So to cancel out a plus 20, we do the opposite. So we will subtract 20 on both sides of the inequality. My 20s cancel. I get 3v is less than 44 minus 20 is 24. Now my last step is to get the 3 and the v split up, okay? Remember, a number and a letter that are right next to each other means multiplication, so the opposite would be division. I need to divide both sides by 3. Divide here and here. So my 3's will cancel and I get v. Now, I divided by a positive amount. Remember, you only flip the inequality when you divide by a negative. So because we divided both sides by a positive 3, I keep this as less than, and then 24 divided by 3 is 8. So our solution for number 1 is v is less than 8. Problem number 2. All right, our inequality is 32 minus 5n is less than or equal to 8 minus 8, and then in parentheses we have negative 7n minus 3. We're going to draw our line through the inequality sign. And our first step is to always get rid of those parentheses, okay? I want those out of the picture. So if I look at the left-hand side, no parentheses, but I do have parentheses on the right-hand side. So my left-hand side is just going to stay the same. 32 minus 5n is less than or equal to. Okay? This first 8 stays the same, but we're going to multiply by the second 8. Now this is a minus 8, which means I need to multiply by a negative. So I'm going to multiply by negative 8 to both terms inside the parentheses. So I'm going to do negative 8 times negative 7n, which is a positive 56n. And then negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Okay, negative times a negative is a positive. Once you do the distributive property, combine like terms. Well, looking at the left-hand side, 32 and minus 5n, those are not like terms, right? The 5n has the variable, the 32 does not. You cannot combine those. But if I look at the right-hand side, I notice I have an 8 and a 24. Neither of those have the variable, so I can combine those. The plus 56n, that's going to stay the same because it does have a variable. So the left side stays the same, 32 minus 5n is less than or equal to. Here I can combine 8 plus 24. 8 plus 24 is 32, and my plus 56n stays the same. Once you've done the distributive property and combine like terms, go ahead and get your variables on the left side of the inequality, which means I need to cancel out this 56n. So to cancel out plus 56n, I just do the opposite. The opposite of plus would be subtract. So I'm going to subtract 56n from both sides, and that will make those cancel. So my 32 here stays the same. Negative 5n and negative 56n, I'm going to add those because the signs are the same. So 56 plus 5 is 61n, and we're going to keep it negative. Keep the sign of the bigger number. And then my less than or equal to and 32. My 56n's cancel. Okay, after that we need to get our numbers on the right hand side. So I need to cancel out my 32. So to cancel out the 32, we will subtract 32 on both sides. So the 32's cancel. I get negative 61n is less than or equal to 32 minus 32 is 0. So we just get 0 on this side. And we have one last step. We need to do the division. All right, so this is a negative 61 and they're right next to each other. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 61. My negative 61's cancel, and I have n here. Now remember, when you divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. Well, I divided both of these sides by negative 61, which means I need to flip my inequality sign to greater than or equal to. 0 divided by negative 61 is just 0. So our answer is n is greater than or equal to 0. For problem number 3, our inequality is 5n minus 3 parentheses n plus 7 is less than 3 parentheses n minus 4. So our first step tells us to do the distributive property. Get rid of the parentheses. So on the left-hand side, I have parentheses right here. There's a minus 3 in front of the parentheses, which means I need to multiply by a negative 3 to both terms. My 5n will stay the same, but negative 3 times this is a 1n. Negative 3 times 1n is negative 3n. And then negative 3 times a positive 7 is negative 21. On the right-hand side, I also have another set of parentheses, which just means I'm going to multiply again, this time by a positive 3. Now again, this is a 1n. They don't put the 1, but you can go ahead and write it in. Multiply both terms by the positive 3. So 3 times 1n is 3n, and 3 times minus 4 is minus 12. Once you do the distributive property, make sure you combine like terms. So taking a look, I have a 5n and a 3n on the left-hand side. Those are like terms. They have the same variable, so I'm going to go ahead and combine them. 5n minus 3n is positive 2n. The minus 21 stays the same because it's not a like term. Okay, they don't have the same letter. If I look at the right-hand side, I have a 3n and a minus 12. Those are not like terms either. Okay, this one has an n, the 12 does not. So we're going to leave it as 3n minus 12. At this point, we can start solving, which means I need to get all of my letters on the left side of the inequality. So I need to cancel out that 3n. So it's a positive 3n. I'm going to subtract 3n from both sides. So 2n minus 3n is a negative 1n. Minus 21 is less than. My 3n's will cancel, and my minus 12 comes down as negative 12. From there, I need to get all of my numbers on the right side, which means this minus 21 needs to be canceled out. So to cancel out a minus 21, I'm going to add 21 to both sides. So they cancel. I get negative 1n is less than negative 12 plus 21 is a positive 9. And then our last step is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by that negative 1. Now remember, anytime you divide both sides by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. So my solution is n is greater than 9 divided by negative 1 is negative 9. This is my solution for number 3. N is greater than negative 9. For number 4, our inequality is 7 parentheses n minus 2, and those parentheses, plus 6 parentheses again, 10n plus 3, and those parentheses is less than or equal to 5n plus 2 plus 5n plus 2. Whew, pretty long problem. So let's make sure we take this one step at a time. Don't try to do more, don't try to combine steps, I guess, just because usually when that happens, that's when we make those little mistakes, and then we mess up the whole problem right from the very beginning. Okay, so try to keep this one step at a time. So I'm going to draw my line through the inequality, get rid of the parentheses first, do the distributive property. So I'm going to multiply by 7 to both terms inside that set of parentheses. So 7 times, remember this is a 1n, 7 times 1n is just 7n. And then 7 times minus 2 is minus 14, or negative 14. Okay? After that, we have another set of parentheses. Do the distributive property again. Multiply, but this time multiply by 6. It's a new set of parentheses. Multiply by that new number. Okay? So I'm going to multiply both of these by 6. So 6 times 10n gives me positive 60n, and 6 times 3 is positive 18. Is less than or equal to. On the right-hand side, I don't have any parentheses, so I'm just going to keep that the same. Again, I'm only going to do one step at a time. So I started with the distributive property. I got rid of all of my parentheses. Now I'm going to combine like terms. Okay? So on the left-hand side, I have a 7n and a 60n. So I'm going to go ahead and put those together. 7n plus 60n is 67n. Well, my negative 14 and my positive 18, those are also like terms. Neither of those has a variable, so I can combine those as well. So negative 14 and positive 18, when I combine those, I'm going to get a positive 4. Remember, different signs, we subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. My inequality sign comes down, less than or equal to. On the right-hand side, I also have some like terms, so I'm going to go ahead and combine those like terms. I've got a 5n and a 5n. I combine those together, I get positive 10n. I also have a positive 2 and a positive 2. Those are like terms as well, so I'm going to put those together. 2 plus 2 gives me positive 4. Much simpler problem at this point, okay? So once we do all that simplifying, the problem gets a lot easier. So I need to start solving. I need all of my letters on the left-hand side of the inequality. So to do that, I'm going to cancel out the 10n. This is a positive 10n, so to cancel it, I will subtract 10n from both sides. So 67n minus 10n is 57n plus 4 is less than or equal to, the 10n's cancel, so I'm left with 4. Once all of your letters are on the left-hand side of the inequality, move the numbers to the right-hand side, which means cancel out the plus 4. So the opposite of adding 4 would be subtract 4. So I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. So they cancel. I get 57n is less than or equal to 0. 4 minus 4 is 0. I have one more step, okay? 57 and n are right next to each other. That's multiplication. So the opposite would be division. Divide both sides by 57. They cancel. I get n. Whenever you divide by a positive, you keep the inequality sign the same, okay? Only flip the sign if you divide both sides by a negative. So my inequality sign, less than or equal to, stays the same. And then 0 divided by 57 is 0. So n is less than or equal to 0 is the solution for problem number 4. At this time, go ahead and pause the video. I would like you to try problems 5 and 6 on your own, and then come back and check your work with mine. For problem number 5, our inequality was negative 30 minus 8p is less than negative 9 minus 7 parentheses 3p minus 10. So our first step was to do the distributive property. So I multiplied by negative 7. I got negative 21 plus 70. Everything else stayed the same because it was outside of the parentheses. From there, I combined like terms. There were no like terms on the left-hand side, so I kept that the same. And then negative 9 and 70, I combined those to get positive 61. The negative 21 stayed the same because it has the variable p, and the 61 does not have the variable. From there, I got my letters to the left side by adding 21p. That gave me 13p. After that, I added 30 to both sides to get my letters on the right. So that gave me 91. And then my last step was to divide both sides by 13. So when I divide by 13, I did not flip the inequality because I divided by a positive amount. And I got p is less than 7 for my solution for number 5. For problem number 6, our inequality is 9 minus 5, and then parentheses 7p minus 9. And then in those parentheses, we have our inequality sign greater than or equal to 3p minus 6, parentheses 8p plus 1. Okay, so my first step was to do the distributive property. I multiplied by negative 5 to both terms. My 9 stayed the same because it was outside of the parentheses and not directly in front of it. So when I multiplied, I got negative 35p and positive 45. On the right-hand side, I also did the distributive property over here because I had another set of parentheses. So I multiplied both terms by negative 6. I got negative 48p and negative 6. After that, I combined like terms. So on the left-hand side, my positive 9 and my positive 54 are like terms. So I brought those together and got positive 54. Sorry, 9 and 45 gave me the positive 54. My minus 35p stayed the same because it has the variable, the 54 does not. On the right-hand side, I combined 3p with minus 48p. I got negative 45p, and I left the minus 6 the same because it didn't have the variable. From there, I added 45p to both sides. Get my letters on the left. So negative 35 and positive 45 gives me a positive 10p. And then I canceled out my positive 54 by subtracting. That way I got my letters on the right-hand side. So negative 6 and negative 54 left me with negative 60. And then my last step was to divide both sides by 10. So when I divide by 10, I got p is greater than or equal to negative 6. I did not flip the inequality sign because I did not divide both sides by a negative. So number 6 your answer should be p is greater than or equal to -6. And that's the end of our lesson on inequalities with the distributive property and like terms.